What screams I make terrible financial decisions. We've been dating for 3 months. Of course, let's join bank accounts. You know those ads on Craigslist trying to sell a car for exactly what they paid for it? Yeah, those. Take over my payments. Buying something really expensive like a motorcycle or a nice rifle, then deciding you're tired of it and reselling it for half the price only a week later. I knew a guy who did exactly that. It was astonishing. It's like, dude, you just lost thousands. I used to work at GameStop. I had a customer that bought a PlayStation because a particular exclusive game came out for it, then would trade the system and game in to buy an Xbox when a new exclusive for it came out about a month later, and would go back and forth trading the respective consoles and games in every few months. I tried to convince him to just own each system and buy the games for each when they released because he was losing so much money doing what he was doing. His response was that he couldn't afford to buy both at the same time. I didn't have the brightest customers. An old friend of mine, we'll call him Friend A, was in a rough place. He had a job but couldn't really afford to get out of the slump he was in, living paycheck to paycheck. So my other friend, Friend B, who owned a house, offered to let him stay for free for a few months. All Friend A had to do was pay the internet bill. $70 mo. Easy enough, right? Well, Friend A decided that since he no longer had expenses, he would just quit his job and play Friend B's Xbox all day long and join a band. Lo and behold, Friend A ran out of money eventually. Now he owed Friend B the internet bill and simply couldn't pay it. Instead of getting a job and paying it, Friend A stole Friend B's Xbox and pawned it, then used the money to pay Friend B the internet bill. How he ever thought it would work, who knows? But that's the definition of terrible financial decisions. We don't talk to Friend A anymore. When you ask them how much they paid for something and they only know how much it costs them on monthly payments. So I worked at a grocery store for 8 years, and the one thing I saw a lot of unfortunately was people putting food back for cigarettes when they have kids. We didn't sell lottery tickets or alcohol, but other stores in town did and heard the same stories. I am a loan officer. A guy called in, 18, fresh out of high school, first job, Pizza Hut. Been at it 3 months. Needed a car. Wanted us to finance it. He was calling from the Maserati dealership. Jesus Christ. I know a guy who makes £80k a year. Military pension. A couple of private pensions and has a Porsche for weekends. He still thinks a Maserati is too expensive. Emphasizing how much you saved versus how much you spent. Look what I got. Originally $25,000. But I got it for $5,000. I saved $20,000. No, you spent $5,000. In Western Australia it looks like this. Get laid off by mining company that was initially paying you well, specifically because it isn't a secure position. But never mind that, already taken out a $600k plus loan on a house, a $80k loan on a sick V8 Commodore, plus another $10k putting in performance cams and a straight through exhaust so you can pull mad skids. This is all on the justification that I'll be able to smash these loans out in a couple years on this salary AI. Frick. What do now? What's that? Tickets to Bali are $300 return? Better take the family for a booze fuel cheap crap buying bonanza. It's fine. We'll just remortgage the house. Dead frickin' easy. I used to live paycheck to paycheck. Now I'll live direct deposit to direct deposit. Cadillac Escalade that never has more than a quarter tank of gas. When they buy a large, fancy boat but can't afford the marina fees and upkeep expenses to maintain it. Or a $100 depth finder so they don't run the mother aground. People who also buy a $1 million yacht and buy the cheapest equipment for it because they really can't afford a fricking yacht, period. I work in the marine industry. $20,000 in credit card debt at nearly 20% APR. I have $19,000 at 19%. I'm a financial genius. I used to know a guy who was renowned for making bad decisions in general. To be fair, he was funny and had a heart of gold. He just wasn't a logical thinker. He never had any savings. He was always buying his girlfriend of the month pretty expensive things, and always mooching off his mum. One of the more flawed decisions that has always stuck with me was when his car broke down. It was a piece of junk, so it was bound to happen. No biggie. He was feeling pretty blue because of it, as well as a collection of other things that had happened around the same time, largely through his own choices. So he decided that in order to finally become a winner he needed to look and feel like a winner. And do you know what makes you look and feel like a winner? Owning a brand new Chrysler. He was so excited about it. He could feel good things coming his way already. He'd picked the one he wanted. $70 K'd. He'd spoken to the dealer and organized when he was going to come in and do the paperwork. Everything was looking great for him. Then when he went to the dealership to sort it all out, it turned out that he hadn't been in his current job for long enough, so the loan finance, which he elected to do through the dealership, couldn't be approved. He came back looking pretty defeated, but, in my opinion, being declined that loan was one of the luckiest things to ever happen to him. This man should not be in charge of his own money. Always broke but has weed at the same time. Farts my dishwasher. Always has a packed bowl in his pocket, but sleeps on his uncle's couch and has to bum a cigarette from me every day. Carrying forward debt from your last car loan onto your new car loan. Unable to remember what they wrote checks for and or unwilling to write down what they wrote checks for. My boss charity just sent out the legally required receipts for charitable donations. Each receipt says thank you for your donation of X to charity name. It's so people can list it as a charitable donation on their taxes, and so we have a list in the event of an audit. I have fielded no fewer than a dozen calls this week along the lines of what is this receipt for? I didn't write a check and no one is polite about it either. They're all in full-blown panic mode. I have photocopies of their checks with the check numbers, which I send them. Suddenly they remember that check they wrote all of a week ago, but somehow never wrote down in their checkbook or whatever system they use. Seriously people, pay attention. Asking your friends on FB for $250 to pay your bills, then post pics the next day of you at the movie theater with $40 of snacks. Just bought 24-karat gold-plated playing cards. They were only $12 on Groupon, but it does look bad. I have a friend who has $95K in student loan debt, $23K credit card debt and a $50K wedding on the horizon. Her dad pays for her school loan. He is paying for the wedding. The original budget was $30K. Got raised to $50K. Here's a kicker. He said I'll give you $50K for a down payment on a house or $50K for your wedding. She picked the wedding. Infuriating. Last wedding I went to, the groom's parents dropped $90K and made sure everyone knew. It wasn't even one of the better weddings I've been to. Standard event hall setup. Marriage lasted less than 6 months. Money well spent. Setting up a GoFundMe account to get their Facebook friends to pay for their wedding, instead of opting for a simpler wedding, or having a longer engagement, or eloping now and having the big party later, while still going out to dinner every other night, and taking expensive trips. Lifted truck with balding tires. And the bastards never realign the headlights, so they are blinding everyone else in traffic. This might get ranty because I just need to vent it out. One of my colleagues is probably the nicest man on the planet. He's kind, considerate and loyal. You couldn't write a movie script for a better person. No Rhodes Scholar, but very hardworking and liked by everyone. Almost every person in his life takes horrendous advantage of him. I can tell that he deeply fears being rejected by his loved ones and craves their approval and acceptance. But it has crossed a line. They have a joint income of over $150K, and yet are circling the drain in debt and can barely pay any bills. They live in credit. His wife is usually a decent person, but when she says jump, he asks how high. This has resulted in numerous luxury shopping trips, her mother moving in and being a complete leech on their lives, vacations, and they just had to buy 2 brand new vehicles last year with all the bells and whistles. They can barely pay the mortgage and the house is a mid-size fixer-upper. At least every week or two he comes in and I force out of him the latest thing they spent way too much money on. Almost everything is on pay installments, even their utility bills. He pays for 5 cell phones. He usually can't drive his truck because there is no gas in it. In the summer we have BBQs every week for about $3 to $5. Hot dogs are cheaper than burgers. And there are times he doesn't have the $3. A 45-year-old man with a 6-figure income doesn't have $3 2 days after payday. Thankfully his kids are clueless that there is a problem, as it should be. They are kids and don't need adult problems. They get whatever they need for school. My concern is that one day the bubble will burst. Repo companies will come in. Creditors are calling. They are precariously close to the edge at all times. All I can do is encourage him to get therapy and learn to say no. But I can't force it. As a kid of financial distress, I think being aware of the financial woes kept me from making the same mistakes. I was always included in the conversation, and when it came time to cut back and make changes to the family's lifestyle for the better, I was totally okay with it. If I was kept in the dark, I likely would have been blindsided and fought the changes aggressively. Complaining on Facebook that you can't afford the $200 it will take to cover your kids' school supplies this year, but also posting a daily pic of your Starbucks drink. That reminds me of a guy at my old shithole apartment complex who always had money for beer, but on weekends that he had his little daughter, she slept on a small mattress on the floor. Dude, buy her a dang bed, you scum. $800 car, $2,000 rims. Those rims are probably rented leased. Trying to pay 2 mortgages, but you also spend hundreds of dollars on video game loot boxes and virtual cards for a mobile phone game. Treating the limit on their credit card as money they have. They have a $5,000 limit on a new card and immediately think what they could buy with $5,000. And opening a new credit card when they run out of that $5,000. I used to be a cashier at a store which had their own credit card that can only be used at that store. Most of the credit applications I processed were either denied or given very low credit limits because those cards attract people with the worst financial decisions. Get your tax refund and completely forget about the last 11 months of poverty you just experienced, while you talk yourself into a brand new 65-inches TV that you'll inevitably pawn to pay your water bill. Maybe I was too specific. Buying a rundown hotel with bedbugs, mold and a broken pool and then spending $27,000 on new signs with over half your savings. This is pretty specific. In my part of the world, it's the newly hired on the oil rigs. When the market is booming, go out buy a truck with a $1,000 monthly payment, then buy a house with a $3,000 monthly payment. Then when the market drops, they lose it all, and their credit ends up ruined, so it's harder to find a decent car place to live. Oil price dips are the best times to buy sweet used trucks and boats in oil areas. I almost fell into the truck trap when I was out there. Rent a center. Heard a co-worker talking about their new bong and she showed me a picture of it on a table with burn marks. I asked why it was so burnt and she said, "Ugh, rent a center's on my bus cause I haven't paid yet, but I don't want to." "I shouldn't have to pay for a burnt table," I replied. "Why would they even rent it to you like that?" she says. "Well, they're buttholes." I told them I burnt it and they won't even give me a discount or anything, they want more. This BS new bong cost more than a table I now own off Craigslist, and she's $200 in debt for a table she can't even keep. I still think about that interaction maybe twice a week. I know someone who uses Rent a Center. I can't believe it's legal. He's paying like $50 a month for the last 3 years for a PS4 and another $100 a month. Same time frame. For a TV that's no more than $800 if he bought it, but he keeps paying for it. He could have bought multiple TVs and PS4s in this time frame. He recently posted on social media, wanted people's opinions on if it's worth it. A post to our personal finance asking what to do when your friends think your novelty checks are real and cash them. When you are part of MLM company and you own your own business, bonus points for using guilt. You just don't get it. They are gonna make so much money after they invest the initial $5,000 in inventory. It's just gonna roll in. No work required. At all. They're just so much smarter than us average Joes. Buying things you don't really need, just because it's on sale. According to this statement, my one financial failing is my Steam library. Poor and played games. Never buying groceries, buying every meal and snack as you please. Questioning you on savings. When you let a friend know how much you have saved and they ask why you aren't spending more. Because if I spent IT I wouldn't have any saved. That's how saving freaking works. My brother just buying a Porsche instead of paying child support for his 3 children. Anytime I see someone who makes less than $25,000 a year buy a brand new car rather than a well cared for used one, I judge them a bit. You should see any parking lot on a military base. Brand new car, no savings, putting things on credit because they don't have money for it. Worked as a wireline engineer in Oklahoma briefly, and wow, this MO is so prevalent it's scary. They'd get a job as an operator and have a brand new 2015 Hellcat by the second week. When your car costs more than your yearly salary. $5,000 24 inches wheels on a payment plan. Having the most expensive phones every year while complaining you don't have money. Buying mostly luxury brand items. Never comparing prices, sizes, weight in supermarkets. I think I'm going to give MLM a shot. Payday loans. Rent to own furniture. A guy that I worked with sold his phone to pay his rent. He got like $40 for it. Spent the next month without a phone, unable to do business properly because he didn't have a way for people to contact him. Told me that he was short on rent, living check to check every month. Later told me he plans on taking out a $4,000 loan. $2,000 of it were to buy an old car he liked and the other $2,000 was to revamp it. Decided he wanted to start breed pit bulls, so paid $300 for a pit bull that then didn't mate with his female and was later run over. Decided to buy 2 Indian ringnecks. Birds, because he wanted a pet, then had to buy proper cage and toys and has to now buy bird food and do generally upkeep on them. He later sold one to cover his rent. Told me multiple stories about how whenever he came upon some extra cash he'd spend it by the next day. He was proud of this too. He told me how he once got a $100 from a family member and then used it within the same night to have a steak dinner and go out for desserts afterwards. When customers would leave him tips, he'd use it to buy takeout food that night. He bought a cat. When he eventually got a phone, he bought one for about $500. That's more than his paycheck. Told me he once wanted to give his wife money, but she told to keep it because she didn't want to spend it, so he literally threw it away. Bought a better fish. You've been spotted by the doggo of studying. Like this video for good grades for the next 2 years. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.